And we're sure that all the other managed care organizations, HMOs, IRIS consultant agencies, and everyone else on this call is going to be interested in and will support this effort. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jenny Neugart, who will cover some housekeeping tips and kind of talk about the way we'll proceed for this session, and then we'll proceed. Thank you all again for joining.
Thank you, Margaret. As Margaret said, I'm a grassroots community organizer for the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. And one of our projects that we work on in collaboration with Disability Rights Wisconsin is the Disability Vote Coalition. So we're happy to be joining you today, and thank you for bearing with us to get this content about voting in the time of a pandemic. It's very important information that we're really excited to share with you all. But just to get started, there's a few little housekeeping things. Everyone's going to be muted during this presentation, and we will have time at the end for questions, but feel free to type your questions as you think of them in the chat box, and we'll be going through those and monitoring them throughout the session. Also, if you run into any problems and you need assistance, feel free to put that in the chat box so we can help you. The PowerPoint and resources from today, including a link to the recording, will be available to you. We'll email that to you when the recording is ready, probably in the next day or so. And we encourage you to share that information with your colleagues. You can also find this information on our website, disabilityvote.org. It's helpful a lot of times if you turn your camera off during the presentation. It just is helpful with bandwidth and things like that. So things just run a little more smoothly. And then I just want to mention there's a really brief poll, just a quick 2-question poll at the very end of the session. So if you could stay on to answer the poll, that would be very helpful information for us to get. So I'm going to throw it over to Barbara now to get us started. And Barbara, just let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Great, thanks, Jenny. And thank you to iCare for hosting today's presentation, and especially thanks to all of you for turning out to partner with us to support voters with disabilities at a time when it's never been more difficult to vote. We really have an opportunity, I think, to make a difference, and glad to have you here today. Jenny, you can move to the next slide.
Give me a quick second here. There we go.
Yeah. So our briefing today is hosted in part by the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition. And just to give you a little bit of background, we're a nonpartisan effort to help support full inclusion of people with disabilities in the entire electoral process. The coalition is coordinated by Disability Rights Wisconsin and Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. And we have a wide range of agencies across Wisconsin and individuals who are invited, who are part of the coalition, and we invite you to join us. If you go to disabilityvote.org, as Jenny said, we've got a lot of resources available for you. We have a very active Facebook page. We invite you to like us and to share those resources. And we'd welcome your participation in the coalition. We have subcommittees and would love to have you join us and participate. Next slide. So I wanted to start out by just reflecting a little bit about what we've seen over the years with voters with disabilities. DRW has a voter hotline, and we also conduct accessibility audits at polling places on behalf of the Wisconsin Election Commission. So we've got that historical perspective. There have been a lot of major barriers historically for voters with disabilities. These include accessibility concerns, challenges around photo ID, because so many voters with disabilities are non-drivers and don't have a driver's license.
I think he has to go OUT.
Somebody's line must not be muted. Can everyone make sure you're muted?
Yeah, thanks. We appreciate that. Another barrier has been failure to accommodations. In the last legislative session, we worked to make a change in the law. Wisconsin voters are required to speak their name and address in order to get a ballot. And that was creating a barrier for some voters who are deaf or for other reasons don't speak due to their disability. Transportation. I'm sure many of your organizations know how difficult transportation can be for voters with disabilities and older adults. That's a reason why many people historically haven't been able to get to their polling place to vote. Lack of training for poll workers. Accommodations such as curbside voting or the ability to have an assistant work with you to complete your ballot are supposed to be available for voters with disabilities. But because poll workers who volunteer their time, which we appreciate, don't get very much training, we often find they're not aware of the accommodations that are supposed to be available. And finally, stigma and discrimination. We've certainly heard from voters with disabilities who haven't been treated in a respectful manner at their polling place and have felt discouraged and sometimes don't go back again to vote. So that's what we've seen historically. This year has taken things to a whole new level. Next slide. Voting during a pandemic. As I said, the barriers have really been unprecedented. People with disabilities, as all of you know, have high vulnerability to COVID-19. So voting in person became high risk. For that reason, people were looking at alternative ways to vote, which sometimes posed additional challenges. We've had a very confusing environment in Wisconsin due to changes in the law related to recent litigation. Just a week or two ago, there was another decision in the 7th Circuit Court, which has further changed the law in Wisconsin related to voting, and we're all still sorting out what some of the implications of that are. As a result, a lot of voters have been disenfranchised. Here are some of the new barriers with COVID. DMV provides photo IDs for voting. That's important because so many voters with disabilities are non-drivers and don't have a driver's license. But during the April and May elections, the DMV was only open by appointment. Even in the best of times, it can be hard for voters with disabilities to get transportation there. It was practically impossible during the April election. Many voters with disabilities chose to vote absentee, but the absentee ballots were late or did not arrive. In addition, many voters who are blind or have another disability where they require assistive technology to vote privately and independently were really at a disadvantage because Wisconsin does not have a screen reader accessible absentee ballot option. Many states have this, and we've really lagged behind in that regard. So we heard from voters who were blind, who wanted to vote privately and independently, but didn't want to risk their health going to their polling place. They really didn't have a good option. Many people struggled requesting an absentee ballot because of the requirement to provide a copy of photo ID. People either did not have the technology to upload their photo ID, or they just didn't have the skill to do so. A lot of people struggled with that. The witness requirement for absentee ballots was a barrier for some voters who live alone and were not sure that they had a way to safely have someone else witness their ballot. For voters in care facilities, during past major elections, Wisconsin has special support. These are called special voting deputies who go to nursing homes and to group homes to conduct in-person absentee voting. Because of the pandemic and the restrictions around visitors to care facilities, special voting deputies were not allowed, and they will not be allowed in the August election either. In addition, family members and other visitors were not allowed to assist. So many residents in care facilities had difficulty voting. Typically, they weren't allowed to leave facilities to vote in person. So unless they had an absentee ballot request on file, it's likely that they were not able to vote in April. We're hoping to change that with your help for August. Transportation, mentioned that as an issue before. During the pandemic, transportation issues are more significant than ever before. Using public transportation is high risk. Getting a friend or a family member to drive you could also be problematic because of people's social distancing. Finally, for those who did vote in person, there were some significant barriers, and those were particularly an issue in a few communities. Milwaukee, Oshkosh, and Green Bay come to mind especially. There were long lines at the polling places, fewer polling places than usual, with many polling places being closed, a lack of curbside voting or long waits for curbside votings, as well as some issues with failure to provide disability-related accommodations. And finally, we heard from a lot of people about their anxiety about risking their health by voting in person. Some people who went to the polling place declined to stay once they saw how long the lines were. So a lot of significant barriers. Next slide. So I hope that little overview, both of the barriers we've seen historically and the new barriers as a result of the pandemic, give you an idea why your role is so very important. With so many members isolated and with limited mobility, your teams, your staff are trusted points of contact. We see voting as one of the essential basic needs that you can address, along with the work that you are doing to ensure that people with disabilities and older adults have access to medication, to healthcare, to food, and to other essential supports. So we're excited to have a chance to work with you today and moving forward to help your members to plan ahead and vote safely. In the time of COVID-19, voting is now a public health issue, as well as a civic responsibility and right. And that's one of the reasons why we hope to work with you to promote absentee voting as one of the safest ways to vote during the time of pandemic. We don't expect your organizations to become experts on voting, although we do want you to increase your knowledge. We want to reassure you that there are a lot of partners who are available to help you. You can turn to our coalition, to the DRW Voter Hotline, to the League of Women Voters, the Wisconsin Election Commission, and local municipal clerks. All are there to partner with you, to share resources, and to provide support to your staff and members, and expertise on voting issues. We hope you'll leave the meeting today with a commitment to identifying a lead staff contact or contacts for voting, possibly a member rights specialist or internal advocates, and have them register for the next training, which will be more geared towards frontline staff and get more into the nitty-gritty of things. And that's scheduled for July 13th at 11. So stay tuned for the next phase here. I'm going to turn it over to Jenny.
All right, thank you, Barbara. So as Barbara said in the beginning, DVC stresses the importance of voting in every election because it really sends a clear message that the disability vote matters and our issues matter. So we need to work together to break down the barriers that Barbara went through and the things that interfere that, so people are empowered and educated on what they need to do to show up at the polls. So the next couple slides are just some dates for you to be aware of. Obviously you don't have to remember these, just to be aware of them so you can refer back. But the upcoming August election is a partisan primary for all the US congressional representatives, Wisconsin Assembly representatives, and the state senators from even numbered districts will be on the ballot. And just a quick reminder, there's no presidential primary because we already did that in April, so we don't want the members you work with to be confused if they were expecting to see that. So some of the deadlines to register to vote You can do that by mail until July 22nd, so there's still a little time to do it that way. In our state, you can do it in person on election day. So on August 11th, people can show up at the polls to register, and we have a lot of information about how to do that. And that will be part of our July 13th presentation as well. And you can also do registration online by July 22nd. The deadline to request an absentee ballot, which is what we're really stressing people do in the time of pandemic, just to avoid putting themselves at risk. For regular voters, it's by August 6th at 5 p.m. You have to have the request made, and you can do that online or by requesting it directly from your municipal clerk. If you're indefinitely confined, you have an extra day, so August 7th at 5, and indefinitely confined is due to age, illness, disability, infirmity. Doesn't mean you can't leave the house, just that you have difficulty, and you decide. You don't have to prove that you're indefinitely confined or anything like that, but if you choose to do indefinitely confined, do it by the 7th, and you can do all the ballots, all your ballots for a year. And then the deadline to return the ballot is August 11th at 8 p.m. So in November, that is general election day. This is the election that most people turn out for because it's the presidential election. And we really try to educate people to show up at all elections, not just the big presidential ones. So on November 3rd, it will be, the president, vice president, all of the United States representatives, the even numbered state senate, so there's 17 seats there, and all 99 assembly seats, all district attorneys, and then there's also going to be, local referendum and local races going on as well. So the deadlines for November 3rd for registration, you have until October 14th by mail, on election day in person, online also October 14th. And then the deadlines to request the absentee ballot for November are by October 29th at 5 p.m. Indefinitely confined voters have until the 30th. And the deadline to return the ballot is November 3rd, 2020. So online, you'll hear us talk a lot about My Vote Wisconsin. That's where you go to do all of these things, register, get your ballot. You can see who's on your ballot there. It's a wonderful website and our most valuable tool. And I can't stress enough to encourage people, including yourselves, to request your absentee ballot now. Don't wait until the deadline. The more lead time municipal clerks have, the less issues we're going to see this time around with people not getting their ballots in time or at all, or not having time to get them and fill them out and return them on time. So I've already done mine for both August and November. You can select for the rest of the year to get your ballot, and it's already come, and I've already voted. So feel free to stress that people get that information in right away. So voter registration. We encourage you to develop a plan to support the members with registration. So if you can establish a team within your organization who can attend the July 13th training, a few people who you could see being like core people who really get to know the voting issues. It's 11 to 12:30, and it's going to be on this platform, and it's really going to go into more of the details about how do you get people to register, how do you request an absentee ballot. We'll talk about voter rights. We'll talk about these timelines, how to stay safe if you do have to vote in person. So it's really designed for the frontline staff who would actually be working with your members. We have a script, so staff can talk to voters if they're doing like a wellness call or any kind of a home visit. It's just a reminder to include the voting information. And then again, they don't have to be the experts on it, but they have scripts and resources that they can work from to assist people. So up to 20 days before election days, before election day, you can register vote online at the My Vote website, by mail or in person at your municipal clerk, or on election day. You must provide proof of residence and a photo ID. So proof of residence are things like a utility bill, a driver's license, pay stub. That can be a barrier for some people with disabilities if they're not sure what they can use, or if they're living in a residential setting of some sort, and what do they have with their name that proves their address. Those kinds of things will need some problem solving with them, and making sure they get the photo ID. Barbara already addressed the issues around the photo ID and not being able to get to the DMV, especially now. Provide access to a voter registration form and assist with documentation. So we provided a link there for help with getting an ID card just for voting purposes. A lot of people we work with don't have a driver's license, but they need a state issued ID. And then assistance, people can always call the DRW voter hotline, and the number is there, 844-DIS-VOTE. And that's really for any disability related voting questions. And that number can be used at any time. It's not just on election days, but it is more heavily staffed on election days. The League of Women Voters is an incredible resource. They've been a great partner on the DVC with us. We've done multiple presentations with them, and they have fantastic resources that we share. Your municipal clerk is a really great resource, because voting is so localized in our state. So it really comes down to that polling place if you have issues. So finding your clerk can be done on My Vote Wisconsin. Again, it's pretty easy. And the Wisconsin Elections Commission is the source for elections information, and they've got a phone number and a website that you can check out. So lots of places to go for information. And then absentee voting, again, we are really stressing with COVID that people vote absentee. And again, we have a script specific to talking to members about voting absentee. Any registered Wisconsin voter can request a ballot for any reason. We're a no excuses state. So that's a nice thing that Wisconsin does have. You don't have to prove why you need to vote absentee. Again, make that request as soon as possible. The sooner the better. We talked already about providing a copy of your photo ID. Again, sometimes that's hard if you don't have great access to technology or a smartphone where you can take a photo of your ID and then figure out how to upload it on the website. The good news about absentee voting, though, is once you've uploaded your photo ID, you only have to do that one time. And then when you go back to request a ballot after that, it's so easy. So a lot of times, if we can just get people over that initial barrier of the photo ID that first time, it's a smooth process after that. Other issues that we've seen happen are completing the ballot and then getting the envelope and a witness to sign the envelope to certify that the person did vote and put it in the envelope themselves and then get it back on time. So we've come up with some creative ideas for how people can get a witness to sign their ballot, including maybe having a neighbor watch them through their door or window, maybe asking some essential workers if they can do it. There's more ideas that we can go into in the July 13th training. And then the lack of screen reader accessible ADA compliant absentee ballots. So if you request a ballot and it comes in the mail, we don't have a law that says it has to be ADA compliant. We're working on that. But so for some people, especially with like visual impairments, that can be a very big barrier for them, because if they went to vote at a polling place, they would have access to the accessible voting equipment. So again, we listed the resources that can help you with absentee voting issues, the same as with the registration issues. So getting into some of the voter rights, you have the right to vote privately and independently. It's a central right that people need to be aware of, especially the privacy part. You have a right to access the polling place, including an accessible route to enter the building, and once you're in the building, so ramps, elevators, things like that. You have the right to use an accessible voting machine. Again, you don't need to explain why you need the machine. We actually encourage everyone to use the machine, whether you have a disability or not. It does not have to be used by only people with disabilities. And that way it just normalizes it a little bit. And in some really small communities, there might only be a couple people who use it. So if everyone is using it in the community, it gives a little more privacy to voters. All polling places are required by law to have that accessible machine, and it's supposed to be set up and ready to go. It's one of the biggest complaints we hear through the disability hotline is issues with the voting machine. It's not set up, or it's not printing right. The poll workers don't know how to use it. So it's something to just be aware of. So people are prepared when they go, like, who do you talk to if you run into an issue? It would be the municipal clerk on site there. Another one that we hear a lot about and have had people actually turned away is you have the right for someone to help you mark your ballot. You can bring someone with you, and we've heard people that were told that that is not true, and they couldn't have that help, and they were stuck. They didn't know how to vote without some assistance. The only thing you can't do is bring your employer or your union representative. And they're not supposed to know how you're voting, and they're definitely not supposed to be telling you how to vote, but they can help you make sure you're doing it correctly. You have the right to ask for reasonable accommodations at the polling place, and some of the most common ones are just like, if there's long lines, having a chair to sit in, a signature guide when you're signing the poll book, or a magnifying glass. Some people can't say their name and address. You can have someone say that for you. If you can't enter a polling place due to your disability, you can request curbside voting. This is another one that a lot of people aren't familiar with. Curbside voting is when somebody would come out, two people have to come out to your car, they bring the ballot to you, they watch you complete it, and then take it back. So some of the issues there that we ran into have been the long lines or not knowing how to access the curbside voting. So we really encourage people to put a phone number on a sign so people don't have to leave their car. Some people just say honk your horn and we'll come out. Or there's a doorbell to ring, which is kind of difficult again if you have a disability to have to get out and ring the doorbell. And but it is a right that people have, and a lot of people don't know about it. So if there are problems, you can ask for a remedy. Again, start with the municipal clerk that's on site right there. If that doesn't work, you can call the Disability Rights Wisconsin Voter Hotline, the 844-DISVOTE, and you can also call the Wisconsin Elections Committee. So I'm going to turn it back to Barbara for the next section. There we go.
Thanks, Jenny. And I also want to thank everyone for the great questions that are coming up in the chat. So keep them coming. I've been trying to quickly type some answers, but we should have some time at the end to get to them. So the next topic we just wanted to briefly touch on is voting and guardianship. That's definitely an area where we get some questions. So in Wisconsin, a person who is under guardianship retains the right to vote unless the court expressly removes it. We often find that people who are under guardianship and the guardian may not be clear as to whether or not they still have that right to vote. So DRW has a brochure that addresses this specifically, and it is on the Disability Vote Coalition website along with the other resources that we are directing you to, and there's a link in the chat to those. But just to give you some of the high points, if someone is not sure, the right to vote is recorded on a court form called, it's a mouthful, a determination and order on petition for guardianship due to incompetency. If the person has lost their right to vote, then a box will be checked. Otherwise, it does not say anything one way or the other. So if someone's under guardianship, not sure if they have the right to vote, that's the form that they need to ask their guardian to look at to see whether or not their right to vote was removed. If they don't have this form, it can be requested from probate court in their county. Another way that they might be able to get this information is that the municipal clerk in each community has access to a list of individuals who are adjudicated incompetent and ineligible to vote, and that is updated periodically. So they could ask the clerk to check the list as well. It's also important to note that a person who has a guardian and has lost the right to vote may petition the court to restore their right to vote. And we've heard some success stories with people who have done this, and it's meant so much to them to have that important right to make the choice about who their elected officials are. Oftentimes, you know, a judge may just have a particular philosophy about this and not really take the time to look at the individual and about their capacity to vote. So people can be successful. And if there are individuals who'd like more information about the process of restoring their right to vote, we do have some materials that we could share with them. I think finally, the important message in this area to communicate is that for service providers, that you don't have to feel the responsibility to make a decision if someone is able to vote or not, that responsibility lies with the courts. So that's the process for determining it, checking that form in the guardianship papers to determine if the individual has that right. So next slide, please. I wanted to talk a little bit more about opportunities for how we would love to partner with your organizations. And I know Jenny's touched on a few of these as well. First of all, a resource that we hope that you'll feel free to use and also share with your members is the DRW Voter Hotline, 1-844-DIS-VOTE. We have particular expertise in disability-specific issues, but we're happy to help with any voting questions, assist with voter registration or requesting an absentee ballot as well. The Disability Vote Coalition, we have a wide array of materials that are available to you: fact sheets, postcards, posters, videos. You can download some of them yourself from our website, or feel free, if you would like to get copies of something like a postcard that you can't really download, we can mail that to you. We have an active Facebook page, and we do a calendar once a month with posts. We'd be happy to share that with you and give you instant content on voting that you can share on your Facebook page as well. We have an e-newsletter. Maybe some of you receive it already. If you don't, if you go to the disabilityvote.org webpage, you can sign up. The form is front and center. Just share your email address, and we'd love to add you to the list. We're also happy to provide you with newsletter stories if you have a specific need for your own newsletter or website, or feel free to borrow from what's in our newsletter. As Jenny mentioned, we have a script that you can use and adapt to have a conversation about voting with your members, and see if they would like some assistance with registering to vote or requesting an absentee ballot. We're also available to provide training or educational programs. I know that some of the MCOs and ICAs are doing virtual programming right now for staff or members. We'd be happy to provide a speaker for you. And as Jenny mentioned, League of Women Voters is ready and willing to partner. If you want to go to the next slide, Jenny, I think we have a map that shows the statewide network for the League. And you can see there have a number of chapters around the state. Check them out. If there's one near you, this is a great resource to partner with you. They may be available to assist with voter registration. If you want more training for staff, they can help with that. And they would be available to do other kinds of educational programming as well. So they've been a great partner in our work, and I know they would be eager to be a resource for your organizations as well. Next slide. I will turn it back over to you, Jenny.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara. So how you can make a difference is develop a plan to support your members to safely participate in the electoral process and identify a point person to be a liaison with us. So basically this issue doesn't get lost. We're all busy, and if you have a point person that's responsible for making sure people know about their voting rights and responsibilities, it's more likely to get done. So we can work with you to develop that plan and provide resources. We've talked about a lot of these already. We've got scripts for the voter registration and absentee voting. We have voting materials that you can mail out. We have like nice postcards. We have some really nice posters and things like that that we can send you. We also have little tchotchkes. We have like bracelets and things like that to get the word out. There's everything that we have is available online, so you can print it, link it, share it, and we encourage people to do that as widely as possible. Most of our materials, almost all of them, are also available in Spanish, and some of them are available in large print, so various types of accessibility features as well. We can provide you with the postcards and other people and other materials to leave in staff homes. So if people are out there visiting members in their homes, we can give you materials that they can leave with them, and we'd be happy to do that. We do a monthly e-newsletter that you can forward, or as Barbara said, we could provide you with something specific for your newsletter. We talked about the training programs that we can do. So if you're an MCO or something like that and you want us to do a specific training for some of your members, we'd be happy to help with that. And then we can provide assistance, direct assistance. So if your point person is working with someone on voter registration or requesting a ballot and they get stuck somewhere along the line, just call the hotline and we can help you work through it. And then again, we have a very active Facebook presence, and we encourage people to share the posts that we make on that page. So right after you're done with this, since you're on your computer, you could go there and just put in Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition and like us before you move on to your next task. So next step is to identify your voting lead and the contact person. Have them register for the July 13th training. That information on registration, I think you've already been sent. Review the resources from today, including sample voter outreach scripts, our partnering ideas. There's a voting plan available, an actual plan that you can work through on our website. As well as our other materials, so you can see what's out there and just get a feel for what kinds of things we can offer. Develop your plan to support your members with registration and absentee voting. So providing the social media content, speakers, those kinds of things. A reminder to sign up for our email list at disabilityvote.org, or you can email us at info@disabilityvote.org. Referring people to the hotline. And then next week is the National Disability Voter Registration Week, July 13th to the 17th. And we encourage people to get involved with that. We are doing a press event at 9 a.m. on the 16th, July 16th. that will be online, so people can watch that, and we will send out a link to where you can find that press event. And you can also hold an event. You could do a text campaign with your members, a mailing, a phone bank. There's lots of different ways that you can promote Disability Voter Registration Week. And then anything promoting the 30th anniversary of the ADA, which is coming up July 26th. It's a nice way to sneak in some voting things too when you're, if you're doing social media around the ADA anniversary. And another thing that we like to slide in there as well is a reminder for people to complete their census and how important it is that people with disabilities get counted, because that impacts like how many representatives we have and how much money gets brought into the state for things like Medicaid services. So I think the biggest takeaway from today is just to remember that you don't need to know everything. You just need to know the key resources, which is Disability Vote, disabilityvote.org, our hotline, and My Vote Wisconsin. And that we're always here to help you. So anywhere along the line, pick up the phone, give us a call, and we'll work through whatever issues you might be running into. So with that, we've got plenty of time for questions, and I know there are a lot of questions there. And Barbara, I know you said you started replying to some, so I don't know if you just want to sort of start at the top here and work our way.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to kind of address one larger area because there have been several questions related to residents who are in nursing homes or care facilities and asking about photo ID and proof of residency. So one resource that will be available very soon, the Wisconsin Election Commission, which we work closely with, is working on a special communication to care facility administrators that is going to provide guidance on this. And once that's available, we will post it on our website, and it would be available for all of you to reference. But in the meantime, just to clarify a couple of key points. For purposes of voter registration, if someone is new at a care facility, they would need to register again because their address has changed. And for that, you need a proof of residency. People have asked about, well, what do you use if you're a nursing home resident? And I'm reading right from the Wisconsin Election Commission. You know, I have the draft of their memo here, so this is official. Some of the things you can use are the intake form from the facility, a bank statement, or any government issued document that has the resident's current name and address. So that is to register to vote. Then to vote absentee, again, if someone is new at a facility, they are going to need to request an absentee ballot for the election. And what the recommendation would be is that they would select the option as an indefinitely confined voter. That's very appropriate if someone's at a skilled nursing facility or in a group home. And that would mean that they do not have to provide photo ID. And in addition to that, they would then receive an absentee ballot for future elections. So that can be a very helpful thing for voters in care facilities. And the indefinitely confined option is not only for voters in care facilities, as Jenny had said, it's for voters who self-certify that they are confined because of age, disability, illness, or infirmity. And that doesn't mean that they can never leave their house, but it means that because of their age, disability, or infirmity, or medical condition, that they have significant difficulty getting to their polling place. So that's a good option for folks to know about. So that kind of addressed a whole cluster of questions there. Jenny, do you want to take one of the other ones?
Oh, sure. I'm just trying to find one here.
Well, I'll read it and then you can answer it. Can you just register absentee one time to cover the year, or does it have to be multiple times?
Yes, so when you sign up for absentee, you can request ballots for the whole year, for a single election, for a couple elections. You get to decide which elections you want to do. So there's 2 left. I just decided to do it for both of them. And like I said, you only have to provide that photo ID once. And then when you go back, it's just it literally takes like 2 minutes to request a ballot again after that.
Yeah. I wanted to circle back to about the whole conversation about voters in care facilities. There's one additional option as well that they can use to fulfill the photo ID requirement. So the care facility administrator can sign a special certificate to validate the identity of the voter. And that's specific for special care facilities. That's not an option for people who are living in the community at their own home. But again, when the memo comes out from the Election Commission, that detailed information will be available there. But just wanted to share that since there was so much interest in this area, that's an additional opportunity for residents in care facilities who do not have a photo ID. So no worries, the voters in care facilities do not have to try and get to the DMV and get that state ID for voting. There are other options for them. So a couple of people have asked about the material being available. So the PowerPoint from today's training, as well as all the other materials that we've mentioned, are on the disabilityvote.org website, and they're posted with the information about this training. So right on the front page, there's a link to this training, Voting in Time of Pandemic, and it will take you to all the materials, which we hope will be helpful to you. And if you have suggestions, we would love to get your feedback. All right, here's a question. Jenny, you want to get this one? How can you tell if a resident is already registered?
Yeah, you can go online to myvotewisconsin.gov and enter the person's information, and it will tell you if you're registered. I think it's just the name and address, and maybe the birth date. And it tells you if you're registered or not. It's a real simple, quick thing to check. And we actually encourage everyone to just double check that they are registered, because, you know, we've all heard stories of people who thought they were and then went to vote and they were not. Just takes a minute to look that up on the MyVote website.
So I see someone was just sharing some great news that came out this week, that the 5 largest cities in our state, Milwaukee, Green Bay, Madison, Racine, and Kenosha, are receiving a large grant, $6.3 million, to help with elections in that area. And Kate, who posted this, thank you so much. I totally agree with her suggestion to, if you live in those communities, reach out to the election commission or the clerk and share with them the ideas that you may have for how they can use those funds in a way that's going to be beneficial and address needs of voters with disabilities and older adults. They put together a great proposal, but there was not a lot in there that specifically talked about some of the barriers for voters with disabilities and older adults. So I think that we have an opportunity to add value with the expertise we bring and the challenges that we are seeing from voters who we support. So let's leverage this great opportunity. Let's see, did we miss any questions? Someone asked about if the administrator form was online, and I did post the link to that. And I know it will be shared as well by the Election Commission in the materials that they're working on. So stay tuned. Well, we would love to hear from any of you if you have any suggestions for the Disability Vote Coalition in terms of how we might be able to do more to provide support for you in the important work you're doing with people with disabilities and older adults. Are there any suggestions you have for additional resources that might be helpful for you? I did want to highlight that we work closely with GWAR in particular, and some of the other groups that provide advocacy for older adults. So they're a great partner, and we have a lot of shared interests and work together on advocacy. Well, one area that, while we're waiting to see if there are any other questions, one area where we did get some questions prior to the training that people had hoped we'd touch on is, what is the impact of the recent 7th Circuit Court decision that made some changes to voting law in Wisconsin? So I'll just very quickly highlight that because it does have some important implications. One is that people must live in a district for 28 days, not 10, before they can vote in that district. So we know that it's not unusual for people with disabilities or older adults to perhaps have to move more frequently because of a change in their status. So that's an important change in terms of voting rights to be aware of. In addition, early in-person absentee voting, which has been a great way for more people to safely vote prior to Election Day, the time period for that to be conducted, unfortunately, has now been restricted. So that can only be held for 14 days prior to the election. I know I was on the call with the Milwaukee Election Commission yesterday, and they are planning to offer extended hours to be able to accommodate as many voters as possible. And of course, it has to be done in a safe way. We don't want to have those big crowds again. So they are hoping to have a lot of additional sites for early in-person absentee voting. So again, if you're supporting voters, that's a good option to know about. If people are not already registered to vote, they could go to one of the in-person absentee sites and get assistance with both voter registration as well as casting an absentee ballot. There also is, unfortunately, a new prohibition that will not allow absentee ballots to be sent by email any longer. We were very excited about the opportunity that was being explored with the Election Commission for absentee ballots to be emailed to voters who are blind or have another disability where they need to use assistive technology, the machines that Jenny had talked about that are at each polling place, to vote independently and privately. Currently in Wisconsin, we don't have an accessible form of absentee voting, and that would have provided them with equitable access. But the 7th Circuit Court decision has meant that that cannot move forward. So only overseas and military voters can get an email, get their ballot by email. You can, however, make your request by email. And finally, there were some changes that allow expired student IDs to be used for photo ID. So those were the highlights. I see we've got a few more questions. Do you want to take either of those, Jenny?
So a little bit of confusion it looks like about, so when you fill out your ballot, then what do you do? Because it sounds like you used to have somebody come and take all the ballots. and send them in. So you can have someone mail your ballot for you, but there's not going to be someone that's going to come in and take them now.
No.
Was that correct, Barbara?
Yep. So if this is a care facility that's wondering, so the options for returning the completed absentee ballots would be to send them by the US mail, and that would only be if you have a week or more of time to ensure that they would arrive by 8 p.m. on election day. So got to watch the calendar for that. The other option would be to deliver the absentee ballots to the municipal clerk, or if it is election day, the ballots can be delivered to the polling place. They must be delivered by 8 p.m. on election day. So I hope that that addresses that.
And another question that we've gotten is, what if you did request an absentee ballot, but it didn't show up? Which may happen. I mean, hopefully we're really pushing people to request their ballots now, but if that were to happen, you can still vote, but you are going to have to go to the polling place and vote in person. But that doesn't mean you can't vote if you've never got the ballot.
Yeah. So someone here has noted a question that if someone is admitted to a nursing home during the election, so I assume that actually means on election day, that they didn't have a way to receive the ballot from family, and there's too little time for activity directors to contact the municipality and request the ballot. And I'll share that with the election commission. You know, there is a specific way for someone who is hospitalized to get their ballot voted in the hospital and return it, but it does require someone going back and forth to do that. And I know activity directors, it's been a very busy time for staff and facilities. So to be able to do that on election day could be very challenging. So thank you for raising that point. I'm going to pass that on and suggest to the election commission that they address that in the training materials that they're bringing out. You know, what are the options for someone who's actually admitted on election day to vote? Mm-hmm. That person, the question right after that had to do with residency requirements. Where did that go? Oh, if a person moves and the date requirement is 28 days, that they would still be able to vote at their old address and polling place. Yes, that's true. They could still vote at their old address. It might not be possible for them to get to their old polling place depending on how far the move was, but they could request an absentee ballot. Someone asked about drop boxes too. That is a great question. I'm really glad someone asked about that. So those became very popular during the April election, again, because of concerns with the pandemic. So many people voted absentee and were anxious to make sure their ballot was returned in time. So many municipalities, they're not required to, but many did establish secure drop boxes. Obviously, they have to be very secure because we're talking about ballots here. I know in Milwaukee, that's one of the things that they're hoping to do with the funding from this grant. I believe their plan is to have a secure drop box at public library locations in the city. So the best bet, we tell people, check with your municipality, talk to your municipal clerk, ask them about the drop box. Unfortunately, although the My Vote website has a lot of great information, it does not have anything about drop boxes. You can look up your polling place location, but you can't find out about drop boxes. But that's a very good option for people to know about as a way to safely return your absentee ballot. Yeah, great point here too. Thank you to A. Jackson, pointing out that residents or any person with a disability who receives their absentee ballot in the mail, they can, if they wish, they can request assistance with completing the ballot. And if you do receive assistance, then the assister must sign. There's a special place to do that on the ballot. So that's a good option to know about. So people are allowed as an accommodation to have assistance with completing their ballot. They just need to have the assister sign.
So Barbara, it is 1 o'clock. I'm wondering if I should put the poll up, and we could still take questions
Yes,
if people
let's
would
put
like.
the poll
but
up. Absolutely. Go for it.
We have that quick poll, but like I said, if you still have a question, please still put it in the chat, and Barbara and I will take care of it. All right, so there you go. If you can answer those 2 questions, that would be very helpful. And again, we will get this information and the link to this webinar out to you via email, so you've got all the resources, and feel free to share.
Well, we just want to thank everyone for participating, and a big thank you to iCare for their work to organize this and promote it and handle the registration. And we really look forward to the opportunity to partner with you to support voters with disabilities and older adults in a year where there are so many barriers. We really have a chance to make a difference.